I think they must be in full gear, trying to get organized to achieve this deadline. So as they prepare, as the committee is trying to bring this statement, then it is important, Mr. Chairman, own your houses. Even better, inform me when I have finished, because I wouldn't mind your information. And this is what I would want you to inform me on, because, Mr. Speaker, yes, it is true that people want constituencies. And as we get this statement, I would want the chairman to further bring out the expected change in cost of running these constituencies. And these costs should not only be limited to the salaries of members of parliament and the other allowances, but also must extend to the level of the infrastructure and development that is required to house or to maintain the extra 70 members of parliament. Because, Mr. Speaker, if the design of this chamber was to accommodate 67, and out of that delimitation, you have another 70, it means that the seats here must be readjusted. That means extra expenditure. It means that, Mr. Speaker, the support required of a member of parliament in terms of drivers, PAs, and wherever must also be factored in. So we would want to understand that budget, how much it will be able to cost the taxpayer, and finally, Mr. Speaker, whether they will find it appropriate to design a uniform for members of parliament, because parliament will be so bloated that it will not even be easy to be able to identify one another. When you increase parliament to the level of 600 or 400 and something members of parliament, honestly, Mr. Speaker, you will require a uniform for identification, just like any other secondary school, like Alliance, or Mangu, or any other that has a uniform. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Masinza, Shionga.
I was standing on a point of order, Mr. Speaker. I was just imagining, is the Honorable Senator in order to want to write other standing orders on uniform of members of parliament? And already we have code of how we can trace in this parliament. Surely, are we going back to class 1, class 2, class nursery? Thank you.
Senator Linturi.
Mr. Speaker, we are trying to be positive and think progressively. Because when you have a National Assembly of 420, a stream in our normal day secondary schools or any other stream in any secondary school is 40 times 8 classes, which is 320. And for you to identify those students or pupils, you must be dressed in a common, in a uniform, so that you're able to identify one another. So when a parliament has 500 or so members of parliament, Mr. Speaker, the only prudent way is to get a uniform way of trying to identify one another, so that, because even so many strangers will be around, and the security of parliament will be, honestly, Mr. Speaker, at risk.
Senator Mogeni, you still want to inform Senator Linturi?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I think I want to join other senators in appreciating the statement that is being sought by Senator Mary, because it raises very critical issues surrounding our 2022 elections. Mr. Speaker, the only point of information I wanted to disclose to my learned friend is that in the BBI, the application of Article 89, Sub-Article 4 of the Constitution, that requires that new constituencies must be in place 12 months before a general election, have been stayed by the BBI report in the transition clauses. So that, Mr. Speaker, even if the BBI report was to pass in, let's say, December of this year, still the new constituencies will be applied in the 2022 elections. But I agree with Mary Senator that there is a lot of work cut out for IBC, because, Mr. Speaker, other than the issue she has raised about constituencies. I've no doubt that even boundaries for our wards will greatly be altered because if you create 12 constituencies in Nairobi, it means that you are going to have new wards. Mr. Speaker, in the last general election, I think we were guided by the Legale report where the minimum number of wards in our constituency was given as 3. The average is 4, but I think there are a few that have up to 7. But it means that we shall have an alteration of even our ward boundaries. Given the fact that if BBI was to pass, the 12 months period that obligates the new constituencies not to apply to a general election will not be applied, I agree that there is work cut out for IEBC, and it's good that we engage them so that we test their preparedness to undertake this very important task. But my committee is up to task.
There's a point of order from Senator Linturi, yes.
Mr. Speaker, though it's not my tradition or my norm to interrupt the Senior Counsel, Okongo Mugene, and the chair of the Justice Committee, I just feel, Mr. Speaker, that is misleading the House and the country. That Article 89, sub-Article 4, has been stained by the BBI report. Mr. Speaker, the BBI report is just a report. It has not gained the force of law. It has not been passed. So how can it be able to stay a constitutional provision on an active document that we are all relying on, unless and until the Kenyans adopt that one? That is probably why I wouldn't be able to agree with him. And because we don't know the outcome of the BBI, then the best thing is to apply the law as is and not to imply that BBI will just pass, and for that matter, that particular constitutional provision will not apply.
Senator Mogeni.
Mr. Speaker, I have always known Senator Linturi as somebody who listens keenly. I began by saying, if the BBI report was to pass, when I've used the word if, it means the position will only change if BBI report passes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Next statement is by Senator Dr. Abdullahi Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What's your point of order?
I'm very sorry to have interrupted Dr. Ali, whom I have a lot of respect to, but I wanted to get a clarification from where you sit, Mr. Speaker, the direction on where you have directed this very important statement to, and again the agency, Mr. Speaker, on the issues raised in the statement needs your direction so that at least we can get to know this information from IEBC, because the issue of even reorganizations of polling stations, demarcations of wards and constituencies, okay, we need to know.
Okay. I think you are right. But I want to commit this statement to the Committee of Legal Affairs. And I think it's a very important statement that is being sought, just like has been said by members here, that as we prepare to get to elections, the country will start getting very anxious. And people want to know how prepared we are. Because if we don't plan and prepare, we are planning to fail. And there are issues, timelines that have also been mentioned here. So I think the committee will move with speed to bring a report. Maybe you'll know who to talk to so that you can bring a report back to this House. Senator Abdullahi Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From the onset, I want to say that the statement which appears there, so a bit been changed, and I've agreed with the Secretariat that they will send to the committee the original statement I sent, which is, Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to Standing Order 46.2b, not 46.2b, 48.1, I rise to seek a statement from the Chairperson Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. In the statement, the Chairperson should respond to the following. What policy or regulatory framework guides county governments on non-remittance of employee statutory deductions, non-payment of work injury benefits, and other, including pension and other labor-related violations? What measures has the government put in place to protect county employees against non-remittance of employees' deductions and work injury benefits, and also pensions deductions? What is the status of Wajir County plus other counties in the country when it comes to remittances of such deductions, especially PAYE, NHIF, NSSF, pensions, and other statutory deductions? Mr. Speaker, sir, why I'm saying that is that, for example, Wajir has not sent the remittances for NSSF for 7 months. It has not sent pension, both deductions for pension, for 10 months. NHIF, they had agreed at the beginning, and later they did not pay the balance. So now they are being told it will be stopped. And this is happening all over the country, Mr. Speaker. It's not only Wajir. We have had several from other counties. I want the committee, not the specific committee for labor, to look into these things because they are really labor-related and not issue of because NHIF is there or finance is there. Whether they cooperate with other committees, I don't care, but I think the labor committee should look into this issue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Ledama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to comment on the statement raised by Dr. Ali. And I think, Mr. Speaker, this is a matter which does not only affect county governments, but also even affect this Senate, in particular the staff of the senators. And this is a bigger problem. And I think what I would like to see is a way where Treasury can also be involved, because we are all alive to the fact that county government do not receive their money on time. Senate office and parliamentary staff have also not been paid. Today, Mr. Speaker, is the 10th of, is it the 10th or the 9th? The 11th. And the deadline for submitting taxes, PAYE, is on the 9th. So when we do not, receive the money, and when the county government do not receive the money, these penalties continue to increase. So I think we've got to look at this issue in a more broader perspective, where instead of these government entities accruing more taxes, they can be able to find a way to discuss with Treasury or this Parliament passes a law that these penalties do not continue increasing. Mr. Speaker, sir, I sit with Dr. Ali in the Health Committee, and we sat with NHIF, and NHIF brought up the same issues. And there, we were able to request NHIF to give a moratorium of about 3 months without charging any penalties or without stopping the services that they render to the staff because of the challenge we have in revenue collection in this country. Mr. Speaker, I think this is a matter that the Committee of Labor should find a way to engage, also invite Treasury, invite KRA, invite all these other entities to find how do we then stop these penalties and how do we waive them to ensure that at least, when county governments are paying what is due to these statutory bodies, they don't continue paying more penalties. Otherwise, we are going to continue just digging a big hole, which we cannot be able to fit. So I support this statement, and I hope that the Labour Committee will take it seriously and even propose an amendment to certain laws, like maybe the KRA Act, so that, when these taxes are due, they can be able to, if it is a government entity, they do not penalize these entities because of the reason why the Treasury has not sent the money. Otherwise, I support.
Senator Christopher Lagat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to say that this particular of counties failing to pay employees on time, and worst part of it is failure to remit the statutory deductions that they have already deducted from their workers, and even sometimes it is reflected in their pay slips that they have been deducted and failed to be remitted to various respective institutions. Mr. Speaker, this has become a notorious act by several counties and even other institutions. I remember when I was the chair of education, the same problem was brought from about 7 universities, including Moi University, where I was, that the employees are complaining that some of them have become blacklisted by various financial institutions. They could not even go for loans and the rest. This is punishing the employees of various counties, Mr. Speaker, and this should be taken very seriously. If there are counties that they have money, they have deducted from their employees, it is reflected in their pay slips, and they have failed to surrender to various institutions, this is a crime. I would like to call upon those, the LEPA committee to take this one very seriously. And even a list of shame be put in place that all those counties that have failed to remit these particular finances be blacklisted and be put into the newspapers and then be brought here to explain the reason behind their heinous acts. So I want to support this statement and say the LEPA committee should take it seriously and it should be very urgent so that we may address this particular problem. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr.
Mr. Speaker, I want to support the statement, but I want to distinguish the issues raised by Senator Ledama on non-remittance. Because the non-remittance, although it's an issue, is not what Senator Ali was saying, if I understood the statement. If I understood what you were saying about the non-remittance of statutory deductions, where the deductions have been deducted from the employee. That is what I understood to be your statement. Now, both the NHIF, NSSF Act treat non-remittance as criminal action. NSSF and NHIF have prosecutors who do not operate through the DPP. So what is happening in counties is that those prosecutors for those particular statutory bodies have been compromised so that they do not, of course, lodge complaints, because ideally the person in charge should be charged. We are aware of a lot of employees who leave office either after the contractual period, and when they go to pick their retirement benefits, they realize the employers have not remitted. For purposes of your statement, it's a criminal action, and I hope that when the committee sits, they can lodge those formal complaints with the prosecutors in those statutory bodies. For the non-remittance of money under Article 219 that Senator Ledama is raising, it's a valid issue. But it's a valid issue and which we have not tackled as a Senate. We have not addressed this issue, and Speaker, maybe at some point, the Finance Committee Chair can address this issue seriously, so that a declaration can be made that counties are not receiving their benefits, workers have not been paid, and the reasons therefore. Because, and I want Ledama to listen to this point, the argument by this Senate should address the Cabinet Secretary to say, you cannot look at the bank account of Makueni and tell them the money in Central Bank has not been used. Because Makueni cannot withdraw that money in sacks when it's not due for payment or when it has not been approved. It's not the law. So if Narok has 1 billion shillings in their account, you cannot say, I will not remit more money. Because it's not their choice. If the money is due, it should be deducted. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, we should authorize all 47 counties and governors to go with trucks at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year and collect all the money from Central Bank and go and bank it somewhere so that they can utilize it. But since they cannot do that, the monthly deductions that the schedule that we pass is the guideline for release of money and not any other framework. And that is what we should be addressing. Thank you.
Senator Njeru Ndwiga.
Yes, I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, most of what I wanted to say has been captured by Senator Mutula. But I want to emphasize that non-remittance of statutory deductions, when the deductions have already been done from the employees, Mr. Speaker, that is criminal. In fact, what we have are employers who are stealing from their employees. Mr. Speaker, it is so painful when an employee has been deducted, NHIF, for example, which covers them and their dependents. And the moment they try to get into a medical facility, to a health facility, they find they cannot access. Why? Because the deductions have not been transmitted. Mr. Speaker, we have instances where employees cannot even access school fees, loans from their SACCOs or other emergencies from their SACCOs. Why? Because the employers have not remitted deductions, have not remitted dues already deducted from those employees. Mr. Speaker, I quite agree that it is criminal. And it is not just happening in county governments. It's happening with very, very, very many employers. Mr. Speaker, very many institutions. Mr. Speaker, we have a list, and I have seen a list of complaints from Cusco and from many other SACCOs that employees are becoming notorious, deducting monies from their employees and not submitting to wherever it should be submitted. You look at the CRB today, Mr. Speaker. Very many Kenyans are listed at the CRB, yes, and the very young ones. And these are employees of these institutions. Mr. Speaker, it is so criminal. Now that means that those fellows cannot borrow money from any other source. They're already listed there. And it is their own SACCO. It is their own employer who has behaved in an irresponsible manner. So, Mr. Speaker, I quite agree that our Committee of Labor should be very diligent. Look at this issue, and perhaps we should find a way of enforcing that all deductions. In fact, it is criminal already not to remit. But these things happen every day, and Kenyans have nowhere to go. I think it is time, Mr. Speaker, that this House finds a way to criminalize properly that behavior. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader, your last statement.
Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to Standing Orders 52.1, I hereby present the Senate the business of the House for the week commencing Tuesday, 16th February 2021. Allow me first to take this opportunity to welcome all honorable senators back from the long recess period. It is my hope that you all took the opportunity to meet with constituents, families, and friends, and that you took time to rest a bit while at it. I also take this opportunity to thank all honorable senators for their commitment and dedication to serving the people of Kenya and dutifully guarding gains of devolution during the last session. The Speaker, sir, on Tuesday, 16th February 2021, the Senate Business Committee will meet to schedule the business of the Senate. On that day, the Senate will consider bills for which, following the judgment of the High Court in Constitutional Petition number 284 of 2019, the resolution process contemplated under Article 110.3 of the Constitution was completed by both Senate Speakers of Parliament. The Senate will also consider motions, petitions, and statements and continue with consideration of business that will not be concluded in today's order paper. On Wednesday, 17th, 2021, the Senate will continue with business that will not be concluded on Tuesday, 16th February 2021, and any other business scheduled for the Senate Business Committee, while on Thursday, 18th February 2021, the Senate will continue with business that will not be concluded on Wednesday, 17th February 2021, and any other business. Mr. Speaker, sir, as honorable senators will recall, the judgment given by the High Court in Constitutional Petition number 284 of 2019 had far-reaching implications on the business of the Senate. I take this opportunity to thank all senators for their patience and understanding as the Office of the Speaker and that of the Senate leadership has continued to engage our counterparts in the National Assembly to fast-track the process of regularizing and conforming to Article 110(3) of the Constitution. So far, I wish to report that the Senate has made tremendous progress in republishing the bills affected by High Court ruling, and to this end, a total of 10 bills are in the process of republication. A total of 19 bills have already been published, and a total of 15 bills are undergoing concurrence process. 2 other bills are scheduled or undergoing second reading as indicated in today's order paper, while 1 other bill was assented to by His Excellency the President. Allow me to take this opportunity to inform honorable senators that the Senate Business Committee is working on a framework for fast-tracking consideration and passage of said bills upon introduction in the Senate. Mr. Speaker, sir, in conclusion, the issue of COVID-19 pandemic cannot be overstated. The pandemic has continued to persist in a third wave, with a third wave being anticipated in the near future. I continue to urge each and every one of us to adhere to the Ministry of Health protocols and to the guidelines issued by the Speaker on keeping safe and preventing the spread of the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, I thank you and hereby lay the statement on the table of the House. Thank you.
Next order. What is it, Senator Sakaja? Next order.
Order number 8, the Mung Bean Bill, Senate Bills number 9 of 2020, second reading.
Honorable Senators, at close of business yesterday, Senator Sani was on the floor and she had 3 minutes, a balance of 3 minutes. Senator Zani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was at the point at which I was trying to tell or to introduce the idea to Senator Wambua that also the aspect of value addition I think is very, very key in one way or another. Mr. Speaker, nowadays you will find that, for example, certain products in the market, in the Committee of Education, we've been talking about feeding programs, especially for ECD, young children in schools. And for example, a simple meal, for example, like porridge, can be enhanced by ndengu, by the mung beans, so that the children can have a healthier diet. And many other ways, you know. People are becoming more creative and innovative. For example, even nowadays you find, sometimes you find samosas that are made from peas, that are made from mung beans, and things like that. So that variety is something that, that can fall into the object of this bill. Other things like promoting productivity is what I was talking about. Introduction of modern mung bean farming technologies, and all these are very, very key. Mr. Speaker, another very important aspect is the responsibilities that are being given to the national and the county governments. This is very, very key. And I think more and more, most of the bills that are coming to this House are moving into the direction of giving allocation of certain duties to the national and certain duties to the counties as per the Constitution 2010. And that's done very well in the second part of this bill, which moves on to give specific responsibilities in Clause 4 to the national governments, including overall measures to overall improve the production, again, national standards and policies, technical assistance, which is very, very key, because we know that for many farmers who are still probably at the level of subsistence, when you give them technical assistance, it helps to introduce to improve the productivity. So all these are very key, and the aspect of research, of course, just ensuring that new ways of doing things are introduced, increase accessibility and affordable inputs to the growers. This bill further moves on also to give responsibilities to the county. And I think more and more of the bills that we're coming up in this House are giving responsibility to the CEC members within the counties in terms of at least being both overseers of the processes that are going on in their counties, but really taking charge. And I think Senator Wambua at one point might want to put together these CECs in some sort of conference or a discussion or in a seminar, so that some of these ideas can be introduced to them, so that they can infuse. Because what I see is more and more we're having so much being pushed to them. So if you do not find a way to sort of catch a niche with this specific topic with them, you might find it is mixed with other issues. So you might want them to begin to think a little bit broadly and a little bit in depth about how the mung beans within each of these counties where they're going to apply this. Ask them for their plans, ask them for their projections, ask them how they want to go about it, which agricultural extension services will there be. And Senator Wambua would also know that some of these will be interested in other crops, so there'll be competition for this as well. So the emphasis to ensure that this crop is entrenched will need that extra effort. Enforcing regulations and standards which have been put in will be also very, very key. Promotion, circulation and access to timely market information, all these are very key responsibilities that are given to the CEC. Of course, the issue of availing inputs and implements is also an issue of the budget. So very, very critical. In fact, most of the time, as we say in Kenya, we're very good at coming up with legislation, but when it comes to actual implementation, it becomes a problem. My time is up. I support, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sakaja.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, this is why I had indicated interest. It was for this one, so I apologize for earlier. I want to thank Senator Wambua for this bill and for sponsoring it. Mr. Speaker, we do realize that the mung bills, first of all, I must confess, I didn't know mung beans is ndengu. I thought they only called green grams, but mung beans is another name for ndengu. This is a crop that grows predominantly in arid and semi-arid areas. Senator Wambua's county is one of those areas. And so it has direct relevance, not just to the country generally, but even to his own specific county. And indeed, that is why we're in this house, to protect the interests of our counties, to think about our people and the issues economically, etc. So congratulations for bringing this. Mr. Speaker, when in the National Assembly, there was a bill that was brought in the Senate, and I think it passed and came to the National Assembly, on potatoes. That was by Senator Karue Muriuki of Nyandarua. And Mr. Speaker, it was very easy for members in the National Assembly to try and make light of it and say the Senate has no business, they're doing potato bills, you know, and joke around it. But when you actually look at the impact of such legislation, these are the kind of bills that speak directly to the common mwananchi, they speak directly to the economy, and they speak directly to what the, you know, Senator Omanga wants me to say hustlers. But really what the common mwananchi is looking at. So even on this one, I know they will try and make light of it and say we're legislating on dengue, but it's an important thing to legislate. Mr. Speaker, I'm sitting next to the chair of agriculture. He will tell you agriculture is 60% of our GDP as a country. 60%. of our GDP or economic activities. But Mr. Speaker, I am always at pains to reconcile a mismatch in economics, that despite agriculture doing 60% of GDP contribution, agriculture does less than 5% of revenue. Its contribution to revenue is less than 5%. And it is because of a number of issues. Number one, Mr. Speaker, as a country, our agriculture has mainly been subsistence, and we have not moved to value addition. And so if you don't move to value addition, you find your people are very busy in this economic activity, but in terms of its contribution to the national revenue, it's still very low. And that is an area that I hope and I know the Committee on Agriculture is really focused on. How do we improve? How do we value add? Why is it that across the world, a lot of the products on the shelves have a huge Kenyan component, whether it is our tea, whether it is our coffee, but locally, we are getting very little out of it. And so that's a discussion we must have as a country. We must have the discussion of how to add value to a lot of our crops. Look at avocados, look at bananas, look at maize. In the part of the country where I'm from, of course I'm from Nairobi, but where I trace ancestry, the biggest cause of poverty is sugarcane and maize, Mr. Speaker. And so we keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Yet at this point, and the reason why we're focused on some of those crops is because that is where the Mzungu left us. Today, if you go to Mumias or Kakamega, and you bring in a packet of sugar from Brazil, from the factory there, to the shipping, to the tax that is paid, to transport it from Mombasa, it will be cheaper than the sugar from that Mumias where you are. People have been afraid to discuss the real problems in agriculture. Because the real problems can only be discussed when we decide, let's put the politics aside, let's address the real issue. Why is it not doing well? Is that the best crop to be grown in that area? Is this the best crop to be grown in a specific area? Today, if you go to Kitale, many of our farmers, including myself, have moving away from maize. We're looking at other crops that actually are doing much better, are giving better yields, instead of waiting for 1 year to go and line up your trucks at the cereals and produce board and get nothing. Now maize is being bought, I think, 2,300, So some radical questions must be asked and answered on this agricultural sector. And that is why I initially, I started saying that Senator Wambua knows why this specific crop is important for the area that he represents, because that is what can work, Mr. Speaker, in that area. So these discussions must be held. People are now moving to other crops, adding value. We have sunflower in Bungoma, but the farmers there are extremely poor, yet we're importing sunflower oil. And if you develop sunflower in Bungoma and part of Kitale, you have a captive market all the way to Turkana and South Sudan, to Uganda, to actually produce oil. And the byproduct of that production of oil is soap. So we want to see factories there, and we need to talk about how then we add value to that crop, and it can transform the economy of Western region, for instance. If we look at what can be done better in coast, can transform the economy and turn it on its head. But look at what happened to Galana Kulalo. So these are questions that we really must ask and really need to answer if we want to transform our economy and forget these high-level theories that I hear people banding around of how to change the economy and how to change the livelihoods of the common person in this country. Mr. Speaker, the second thing that impresses me in this bill is nuanced. It is the issue of school feeding. And I want to thank Senator Wambu. I spoke about this yesterday. Mr. Speaker, if you go to many of our schools, and I've gone now, since schools opened in Nairobi, I've visited now around 8 schools. And you look at those children, you'll want to shed a tear. Because they're trying to keep brave faces, but they're hungry. At home, there's nothing. the COVID pandemic has had a very, very bad effect on the economy. So their parents are really broke. We used to have a school feeding program. When I was growing up in Nairobi, we used to have maziwa ya nyayo. You know, we'd get milk, you know, in school, which would add the nutrition. And that's why, even as you remember, the first anniversary of the late President Moi, he left a mark. But something we must add, apart, you know, we're giving MCS 4 billion for BBI, yet with a similar amount, we can actually feed all our children in schools while helping the economy, Mr. Speaker, because it's the farmers who are growing these things. So such that the government now buys rice, buys this ndengu, buys maize, and make sure in school a child at least will get a meal. I don't know how Senator Milgo, when I raised it yesterday, what you have thought about, because it's your committee. We must reintroduce it. In the urban areas in Nairobi, Nairobi is what we call shamba la mawe. When you don't have money, you will not eat and you will not sleep, because everything you have to pay for. At least for some of you in the rural areas, you know, there's something, even if you pluck off the fence, it is mboga, you know, the hedges, the hedges are edible. Your neighbor will give you what we call a gorogoro of maize. But the children in Nairobi and in the urban areas are really suffering. So I think while you've put this here, we must emphasize that aspect of school feeding by government being able to buy this produce from our farmers. I don't think there'll be a better way to allocate, whether it is 5 billion or 10 billion, Mr. Speaker, for our children. Because if a child has nothing in their stomach, nothing will go into their head. Nothing will go into their brains, you know. We've started, you know, together with private sector, some of the Rotary clubs where Mutula made me join, some of these people are helping me take food to some schools, but it's not sustainable. As a senator, I can't feed all the kids in Nairobi. So I'd really urge, and I'm glad the leader of majority is here, please, even as we're going through the BPS and this budget program, as a Senate, please let us think about the issue of feeding our children in schools. I think there's no better thing that you can be able to do. So thank you also, Senator Wambua, for raising that issue of school feeding within this bill. It talks about how to facilitate access to the markets, which is extremely important. Mr. Speaker, when we were having our debate last year and people were saying there's no agriculture in Nairobi, I told them part of agriculture is the market. And the biggest market for a lot of our agricultural products, whether it is livestock, is Nairobi. If you look at Kiamaiko, if you look at Dagoretti Corner, all of those abattoirs, it is your livestock that come there. If you look at Marigiti, if you look at Wakulima Market, it is the market. Now, if agriculture is 60% of the GDP, yet every year we're having 30 to 40% post-harvest losses, then really we're you know, putting money in a hole. We must look at storage. We must look at access to markets. We must look at extension officers and the contribution in the end, you know, of the value chain, and that is the markets. So that is something which is extremely important, and I'm very happy that Senator Wambua has raised it in this bill. We need to strengthen the capacity of communities. Back in the day, there used to be a lot of agricultural extension officers. I don't know if they're still there as much as they were before. You know, the agricultural extension officers would come and tell you, you know, they'll test your soil, and they say, with this kind of soil, this is what you need to do. They'll be able to see whether the outbreaks of diseases, you know, that needs to be re-emphasized. And that can only be done by giving counties money, because agriculture is essentially a devolved function. And so the growers must be assisted on post-harvesting management of mung-bean products and also other crops that we have, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I move to finalize, because I want to say that I fully support this bill, I'd like to encourage members to really pay attention to this sector of agriculture. And let us make it, again, interesting for our young people to get into. Because young people have thought that agriculture is a dirty thing, that agriculture is not cool, but it's the coolest thing you can do. Before I got into agriculture myself, you know, I thought, now, what would I be doing trying to kulima shamba and all of that, Mr. Speaker, in quotes. But the income that comes out of it, the results, and just the magic of putting something in the ground and something coming out, you know, it is what God has given us. And that's why today I'm very proud, as a farmer as well, on top of whatever else I do, I'm very proud that young people are getting into agriculture. Let's encourage them to get more into it. And not just think of you know, a boda or what Millicent Omanga wants to give them all wheelbarrows. Let them try and engage meaningfully in actually making something out of tilling the land. Mr. Speaker, I pray that this bill is fast-tracked in the National Assembly so that it can become law. And Senator Wambua will have a bill to his name. It's a very proud moment when you start a legislation from scratch, it goes through the two houses and it is assented to. You will not be forgotten. And I'm proud of the kind of bills that are coming. Look at what Senator Aaron Cheriot did with tea. You know, even though somebody might have tried to trivialize that as well, it has already, you know, the market already is responding well to that legislation that has been passed by this House. So, hongera sana Senator Wambua. You can count on our full support. We don't grow much mung beans in Nairobi, but we're also thinking a lot of urban agriculture. We eat a lot of it. We're the biggest consumers of mung beans. So we are huge stakeholders. But again, I will debunk that myth that there's a lot of agriculture in Nairobi. You know, if you go to some full, like Dagoretti South, you know, if you go to Waithaka, if you go to Mutuini, there's a lot of agriculture. If you go to Njiru, we were talking about Njiru just now, in Kasarani constituency. If you go to parts of Roysambu, there's a lot of agriculture. And I like to encourage my farmers in Nairobi as well, not just the consumers, but also the farmers to really, and there's a lot of innovation. Even in some of the areas without space, there's agriculture being done in guinea bags, you know, that is very modern urban agriculture. So we are stakeholders, and thank you for bringing this. I hope next you'll also bring one on the mangoes and the value addition, because, you know, in Ukambani, that is something that, you know, can really change the economy. They grow very naturally there, but we're not seeing a lot of production and packaging, commercial, of juice, you know, and the other byproducts that come from those crops. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Senator Wambua.
Senator Njeru Ndwiga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first I want to congratulate Senator Wambua for sponsoring this bill. Speaker, as Senator Wambua is the Vice Chair of Agriculture Committee, even before he had moved this bill. And the committee did undertake public participation. And we went to Kitui to do public participation. Mr. Speaker, I would like to inform this House that the enthusiasm that we saw in Kitui when we were doing that public participation, the women, even young farmers in Kitui, the enthusiasm is overwhelming. I still remember that day nostalgically when we had that meeting with the farmers of Kitui on this bill. Mr. Speaker, I want to also join the other speakers who are supporting this bill and the reasons that they have given thereof. Mr. Speaker, this continent called Africa will never get off its feet if we keep thinking in the last century. Mr. Speaker, it is time we woke up as a continent. First of all, okay, we wake up from Kitui with the mung beans and other places. But as a continent, we must wake up. It is time we woke up. Mr. Speaker, we were established by our former masters, the colonialists, as people who produce for them. But we have forgotten, Mr. Speaker, that if we think outside the box, we could even be better exporters. I want to invite this House, Mr. Speaker, to an episode where the Prime Minister of India visited this country. And it was agreed that we will produce mung beans and export to India. It was one of the mikatapas which were assigned at that time. Do you know, Mr. Speaker, when they went back to India, instead of importing our mung beans, they mobilize their farmers to produce mung beans. They mobilize their own farmers to produce mung beans. So that now all the mung beans we are producing in this country had no market. Mr. Speaker, tumerogwa na nani? Now, who as a country, and I apologize, Mr. Speaker, that's a parliamentary, so I withdraw. First, I cannot mix languages. Mr. Speaker, as a country, it is time we started thinking outside the box. Now, if we are producing whatever we are producing, can we, and we have such educated scientists and food technologists in this country, we should not just be going to the farm to just put things in the soil, wait for them to sprout, and then wonder what we are going to do with them. As if we did not go, they know they will grow. Mr. Speaker, it is time we started to think about this thing called value addition. Nobody, in fact, it is crazy today. The whole world waits for Africa to produce raw material and send raw material to them. Raw material to them to do other things and to improve on what we have sent, and then they re-export it. They re-export it back to Africa for consumption. Mr. Speaker, that is crazy. If we are doing the same things that we expect, we're talking about poverty in Africa. If we are doing the same things, how can we get different results? How can we get different results? We are going to continue in this in perpetual poverty unless we change our mindset. And our mindset, Mr. Speaker, is first of all we have got to change our political thinking. The way as politicians we behave is as if the country does not belong to us. We go out and make beautiful statements. But Mr. Speaker, who is telling our young people today that you can go out there and grow mung beans and grow the other things which we value add here, which we will consume here? Mr. Speaker, Senator Sakaja just talked about sunflower. Today, even feeding our own cows here so that they can produce milk. They can produce milk. We have to import ingredients which include that sunflower cake from Uganda. Are we crazy? Mr. Speaker, what is happening to us? Mr. Speaker, I quite agree that this country, we cannot just be talking about us being an agricultural country, yes, and doing nothing about investing in that agriculture. In fact, Mr. Speaker, today, we had a session, my committee had a session with the Council of Governors in Mombasa to discuss issues agriculture. I'll tell you, Mr. Speaker, for all of them, and we're asking, what percentage of your money do you invest in agriculture? Mr. Speaker, if they are not paying NHIF, what do you think is going to agriculture? Mr. Speaker, we need to be focused as a country. As a country, we need to be focused. Just look at what is happening in the other sectors. Look at the coffee sector. Look at the tea sector. We just passed the tea bill here the other day. Well, Mr. Speaker, if you looked at the other countries who are tea producers, it is true. India, they will be the biggest producers, but they consume most of it. Now, Sri Lanka, in the neighborhood there, they are big producers, but they do not export their tea in raw form. We have got to wake up and start and move into the direction of value addition. In fact, I'm challenging government that whatever we have as a country today to improve in agriculture, let's go into value addition. And this country is waiting, the world is waiting. Mr. Speaker, I'm a big supporter of African FTA. Because, Mr. Speaker, even without thinking about what we are going to feed Muzungus, this Africa here, very many corners of East Africa here. We can send mung beans there to very many places inside Africa. But we do not think about cross-border trade, about our own trade. If we traded amongst ourselves here, we will begin to get respected by everybody else in the world. But Mr. Speaker, we don't do that because we think that the only place is Europe or in Asia. Mr. Speaker, I support that the mung bean bill, I support, and I have already supported as chair of Agriculture Committee. And Mr. Speaker, even where we say that some of this agriculture is subsistence farming, Mr. Speaker, when you have a farmer in Kitui, or that peasant in Kitui, who has produced 5 bags of mung bean, are they going to eat 5 bags of mung bean? No. So that's the thing of subsistence farming, and that concept and thinking should change in our mindset. Mr. Speaker, we must begin to think that agriculture is business. And we must begin to imagine or to design ways to introduce our children and the young people in this country to agriculture. But for us to do that, we must make it interesting and we must make it pay. Because, Mr. Speaker, I believe and I know agriculture pays. I've been a farmer myself since I was a young fellow, and I'm still a farmer. But I know, and I do know, that agriculture pays. But we've got to be focused. This country, just go to Kabete, that veterinary where we train agriculturalists. We have, just listen to them. Just listen to the ideas that ooze out of their mouths. Beautiful ideas, Mr. Speaker, beautiful. We have such educated agriculturalists in this country. But what are we doing with all this, Mr. Speaker? It is time we change our focus. Stop thinking about producing just for consumption yet to happen. And even if it was just ours, even if it was our own consumption, Mr. Speaker, let us be creative. Let us value add so that we get more value for whatever we produce. Mr. Speaker, I support, although I do not want to discuss the coffee bill before it runs here, but I have seen a line there which says that we will increase duty and taxes for all coffees that will come back into this country. Yes, Mr. Speaker, I support. But I also want to suggest that we zero rate all coffees which will get into this country, or raw coffee which will get into this country, so that we can start a process of being coffee manufacturers for the world. That's what we need to do. The days when that coffee had money, Mr. Speaker, Coffee Board of the day used to produce our coffee in industrial area here. And all of us, we know Kahawa #1, KK Kahawa, those things. We know, but I don't want to get there. I know we'll be getting to a coffee bill soon. Today we are on mung bean and agriculture. This is what we must support. And I think, and I believe very, very strongly that we must move into areas of value addition. Why? Let us get rice from Mombasa. Let us just look at the nutrients of the mung bean. Let's go and Google if you don't know. Look at the nutrients, right? There's nothing you need for school feeding. When the Sagana, you go to Moya, to Moya, go and get the rice from those peasant farmers there, and the Kitui and all those other places which produce mung bean. Yes, school feeding program. Young fellows, our students, instead of giving them complicated foods, young mung bean and mchere mix up, very nutritious food, absolutely nutritious, yes. Mr. Speaker. So, and then you have very nutritious food. That is the direction we should go. And the moment we go there, perhaps then somebody else, some neighboring country might say, that thing that you are giving your children there, please send it over to us. Because then it will be a package, to be a brand. To be a brand. It will not be just mang bean. It will not just be basmati rice. It will be a brand. And that will create employment for our people. Mr. Speaker, I know many of my colleagues would like to contribute to this bill. I support and I urge all of us to really support. And Mr. Speaker, in my own county also, is a producer of mung beans. Yes, that is why I support Senator Wambua's initiative, and I salute Senator Wambua's initiative. This is the direction to go. This is how you think about your people. But think about your people now. You have hata watu wangu across the river. You have enriched what they do. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I beg to support.
There should reflect the fact that they hold discipline of members of parliament very highly. So I just want to request, actually I couldn't oppose this in the committee of selection, but the Honorable Oscar Sudi and the Honorable Joanna Ngenu and the Honorable Didmas Barasa, let them remember that the image that they carry out there is very important, so that when we put them in the Committee of Powers and Privileges, Mr. Speaker, one would expect that when they hear that a member is in discipline and is subjected to Oscar Sudi for discipline, Mr. Speaker, I don't know how many of us would be confident. Oscar Sudi, and even lately, my friend Joanna Ngenu, subjecting Honorable Mbadi for discipline before Oscar Sudi, Joanna Ngenu, and Didmas Barasa. There's nothing really wrong I'm saying, but I'm just requesting that going forward, the image of Parliament that they should carry outside, because they have not been misbehaving inside here. That I must give them credit for. But even in funerals, people will ask, these are the people who discipline members of Parliament. No wonder there is no discipline. So that was just a caution. I don't know why other members are agitated, because I'm talking about the image that they carry across. Mr. Speaker, that is what I wanted to say. And so with all due respect to these members, and by the way, I've done it in good faith, I have nothing really against the said members of Parliament. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Well, I deserve the House to put the question. That pursuant to the provisions of Section 15, subsection 1, paragraph A, Roman 2 of the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act 2017, and standing under 175, this House approves the appointment of the following members to the Committee of Parliamentary Powers and Privileges, in addition to the one specified under Section 15, 1A, Roman 1 of the said Act, and that one is actually the Speaker. 2, the Honorable Josephat Kabinga Wachira MP, the Honorable Kwadicha Gufu Wario MP, the Honorable Francis Chachuganya MP, the Honorable Vincent Kipkurui Tuwei MP, the Honorable Anthony Getiaka Kiai MP, the Honorable Gladwell Jesire Cheruiyot MP, the Honorable Captain Retired Didimas Wekesa Barasa Mutua MP, the Honorable Oscar Kipchumba Sudi MP, the Honorable Joanna Ngeno Kipiegon MP, the Honorable Andrew Mwandime MP, the Honorable Omar Mwinyi Shimbwa MP, the Honorable James Onyango Koyo MP, the Honorable Danson Mwashako Mwakuoma MP, and the Honorable Vincent Kemosi Mugaka MP. Will as many as without opinion say aye? Aye. As many as contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it.
Order number 10, motion. Appointment of members to the Budget and Appropriations Committee.
Honorable Junaid, what is your point of order?
No, Mr. Speaker. The motion that you have just passed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I checked the ranks of the military in the country, you can only retire as a major and going up. But you have just said retired Captain Didimas Barasa. Mr. Speaker, captains are not recognized when they are retired. Mr. Speaker, that title should be. This is a House of Records, Mr. Speaker. It will go to the records of the House that he has retired as a captain, Mr. Speaker.
Well, I think that's a matter that maybe the clerk's office should look into, because I have sat here with retired Captain Nakitare from Transoya, wasn't he? And he was recognized here as a retired captain. Wait, maybe I don't know whether was he recognized as retired or tired? One of them. Retired. Anyhow, point noted, Honorable Junet, Honorable Kimunya.
Thank you. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 175 and 207, this House approves the appointment of the following members to the Budget and Appropriations Committee. Number 1, the Honorable James Kanini Kega Madenge, MP. Number 2, the Honorable Moses Lesonet, MP. The Honorable Bernard Masaka Shinali, MP. The Honorable Ruth Wangari Mwaneki, MP. The Honorable Sarah Paulata Korede, MP. The Honorable Samuel Moroto Shumel, MP. The Honorable Fatuma Gedi Ali, MP. The Honorable James Gishoki Mugambi, MP. The Honorable Marcelino Malimo Abere, MP. The Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe, MP. The Honorable Josephine Naisula Lasuda, MP. The Honorable Jude Jomo, MP. The Honorable Florence Chemgetich Koskei, MP. The Honorable Masi Wanjiko Gakuya, MP. The Honorable Francis Kuria Kimani, MP. The Honorable Alfred Kipto Keter, MP. The Honorable CPA John Badi, MP. The Honorable Mili Odiebo Mabona, MP. The Honorable Dr. Benson Makali Mulu, MP. The Honorable Samuel Onunga Atandi, MP. The Honorable Badi Twali Badi, MP. The Honorable Engineer Mark Nyamita, MP. The Honorable Paul Abur, MP. The Honorable Danson Mwashako Mwakuona, MP. The Honorable John Sakwa Bunyasi, MP. The Honorable Richard Onyonka, MP. And the Honorable Joseph Manje, MP. And to note that this effectively will move the Honorable Joseph Manje from the Committee on Implementation simultaneously. Honorable Speaker, as members will be aware, the Budget Committee has a life of 3 calendar years in accordance with our standing orders. And those 3 calendar years started in 2018 because we had a late start because of the repeat elections. So they did 2018, 2019, and 2020. And hence we'll have another 2 calendar years of 2021 and 2022. So they'll have the onerous responsibility, obviously, of working on this budget for 2021-2022 and processing the budget for 22 and 23, which will obviously be tabled before this House in early January. From January. And as I said yesterday, that within our calendar, members who have noted that we have if you could protect me from Honorable Junet, Honorable Speaker, as I said yesterday, members will be aware that instead of coming back in February, next year we'll actually be coming back in January, so that we have an accelerated more time to process the budget issues before we go seeking re-election or making other decisions on what we want to do and appearing before our rendering account before our voters. So it's an important time, and I would want to ask, I know the committee has not had challenges. We've had to make 3 changes to the committee, not on account of incompetence, but because of other considerations, to just make, and this involve the inclusion now of Marcelino Abele comes in as a new member. The whip, Emmanuel Wangwe, comes in as a new member, and Joseph Manje comes in as a new member. And obviously, these are totally new committee. The old one stood disbanded at the end of, anyone, if you don't find your name in the new reconstitution, then you know your name has been dropped. The Speaker, I'm surprised that the Honorable Junet, as a whip from the NASA side, is raising issues. They're the same names, but he's a whip, so I've given me the names, and he's one of the whips. So, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move, and we'll be asking the Honorable Kainan, who is the secretary to the party parliamentary group for the Jubilee Coalition, to second.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand to second the list as read by the majority leader. Sorry, I came late. But I think it's good to emphasize that the Budget Committee is the nerve of our parliamentary activities, and I know right now, at this difficult time as a result of the COVID crisis, I hope they will apply prudent policies and ensure that our country does not go broke, and also ensure that all sectors of our economy are also funded properly, and wish the new members and all members good luck. I know it will be a very busy committee, and therefore I stand to second.
Members, I wish to propose the question, which is that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Orders 175 and 204, this House approves the appointment of the following members to the Committee on Appointments. No, sorry. I think I moved faster than that. Sorry. It's order number 10. I repeat. Propose the question, which is that pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 175 and 207, this House approves the appointment of the following members to the Budget and Appropriations Committee. Number 1, the Honorable James Kanini Kega Madenge, MP, the Honorable Moses Lasonet, MP, the Honorable Bernard Masaka Shinali, MP, the Honorable Ruth Mwaniki, MP, Wangari Mwaniki, MP, the Honorable Sarah Paulata Korere, MP, the Honorable Samuel Moroto Chumer, MP, the Honorable Fatuma Gedi Ali, MP, the Honorable James Gichuki Mugambi, MP, the Honorable Marcelino Malimo Albele, MP, the Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe, MP, the Honorable Josephine Naisula Lesuda, MP, the Honorable Jude Jomo, MP, the Honorable Florence Chemngetich Koskei, MP, the Honorable Masi Wanjiko Kakuya, MP, the Honorable Francis Kuria Kimani, MP, the Honorable Alfred Kiptol Keter, MP, the Honorable CPA John Bandi, EGH, MP, the Honorable Mili Odhiambo Mabona, MP, the Honorable Dr. Benson Makali Mulu, MP, the Honorable Samuel Onunga Atandi, MP, the Honorable Badi Twalib Badi, MP, the Honorable Engineer Mark Nyamita, MP, the Honorable Paul Abur, MP, the Honorable Danson Mwashako Mwakuoma, MP, the Honorable John Sakwa Bunyasi, MP, the Honorable Richard Onyonka, MP, and finally, the Honorable Joseph Manche, MP. Which is the point? What is your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I stand to oppose this motion, Mr. Speaker, and Mr. Speaker, when Parliament did their standing orders and made this committee to be a committee for a period of 3 years, there was a reason for it, Mr. Speaker. And the reason was to allow as many members as possible to serve in this committee, Mr. Speaker. This is a very important committee for this country and for this House, Mr. Speaker. All other committees were put for 5 years term, the period of the whole Parliament, Mr. Speaker. And this one was decided in the wisdom of the House that members should serve for 3 years so that they can give way to other members also to serve in the same committee, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is fortunate or it is good that you have been the Speaker even in the last Parliament, Mr. Speaker. This matter came up in the 11th Parliament, and it was raised by Honorable Jacobi Midiwo, Mr. Speaker. And that is when the House changed the standing orders so that we can have it for 3 years and it can be changed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is the committee that decides how the national cake is shared in this country, Mr. Speaker, through this House, Mr. Speaker. We should have members who have not served in this committee for the reasons that, Mr. Speaker, we know what happens in this committee, Mr. Speaker. I don't want to impute improper motives, Mr. Speaker, on the committee and in the House, on the House, Mr. Speaker. But we know each other, Mr. Speaker. The kind of revenues that go to their constituencies, the members of this committee, Mr. Speaker. Let's call a spade a spade. Chairman, you are just a burial committee chair of the other day. Keep quiet. This committee has been in existence for the last 8 years. You've just become a chairman the other day. Mr. Speaker, it is in my view, and urge members we reject this list, so that we have representation from other members who have not served in this committee, Mr. Speaker, so that Honorable Bokose can get an opportunity to take some development projects to his constituency, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Maoka Maore can have, if we are going to have the 27 members who have been there, Mr. Speaker, we want to know from the committee the list of projects that have gone to those 27 constituencies, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let us be fair. The fairness must begin in this House, Mr. Speaker. It can't begin outside the House, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I am pleading with the members that we should not allow this, because the last Parliament refused it. This Parliament also must reject it, Mr. Speaker, and let us have other members. If you have served a 3-year term in that committee, please give way to another member. Please. This is not a committee that was formed for you, Mr. Speaker. With those few, Mr. Speaker, I am urging our members here to support me in rejecting. The members who are there, who have performed very well, whom we need their expertise, like my chair, my leader here, who is a senior accountant in this country, maybe some lawyers who can help them in law, like Millie Odhiambo, we can discuss at the level of party. But, Mr. Speaker, we cannot have members who have served for 3 good years. Some of them have benefited from projects through that committee, Mr. Speaker, of enormous amount, Mr. Speaker. Kindly, these other members also are elected like you. They need to take care of their constituencies. They need to participate in the sharing of the national cake, because they also represent people. They don't represent cows, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm urging members here, this list must go down. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable John Bandi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's very untidy for me to respond to my whip. Because again, my whip is, I think I've never had a very good working relationship with anyone like I do have with my whip. Ideally, or ordinarily, it was a whip who should have forwarded the names, but because of some other commitments, in fact, I had to leave Homa Bay to come. Actually, the leader of majority called me that I need to be here. I was supposed to be in Homa Bay for a very important function of the Catholic Church, but I had to leave home to come and sign off this list because my whip was engaged elsewhere. And I actually shared with him after, in the spirit of disclosure, I actually shared with him after this And, well, he did have problem with one or two names I'm not going to mention. But we agreed that since I'd already reappointed the same members, it would be okay. Mr. Speaker, I just want to caution that let us not scandalize ourselves. Because really, when it comes to committees and people using committees to lobby for funding for their constituents, it happens every day. I've been in the Public Accounts Committee, Mr. Speaker, and I will tell you that at that time, we got funding from the Ministry of Education. And there's nothing really wrong with that, because the money went to the schools in my constituency and the rest of the members of Public Accounts Committee. In the Committee of Transport, I know that out of the fuel levy fund, there's some allocation that goes to those members of those committees. And there's nothing really wrong, because this is a discretion of the Cabinet Secretary for Transport. Now, when it comes to budget, if there is any committee, Mr. Speaker, I wish the members could listen to me. If there is any committee that cannot put any money without this House knowing, then it is the Budget Committee. Because every report of the Budget Committee, including the appropriations bill, passes through here. So, Mr. Speaker, I just want to caution ourselves. Let us not feel incited. If you look at the membership of this committee, some members have just been appointed to this committee last year when we made changes to the committee, like Honorable Kanini Kega. There is Honorable Fatuma. No, Fatuma has been there. Malimo has not been there. Emmanuel Luangu has not been there. The Honorable Atandi is new. Honorable Sakwa Bunyasi was not there before. Honorable Sakwa Bunyasi came in last year. We moved him from Public Accounts Committee to this committee. So, Mr. Speaker, I know some of the members, like myself, have been in this committee for long. And by the way, this is the only committee where I sit, the substantive committee. So, and then like Honorable Millie Odhiambo, only sits in one committee. Mr. Speaker, I want to just persuade my friends and whip that please just allow this to go on, proceed, so that we don't appear like fighting ourselves. But the bottom line is that you cannot scandalize a particular committee. Yet we know, even right now, Mr. Speaker, if you ask me today, Mr. Speaker, the Committee of Kaluma Internal Security may get 1 or 2 police officers based on their lobbying. There's nothing wrong with that. Those are Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
But what is your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, sir, it is quite unfortunate to hear from the leader of minority that committees benefit from the committees where they are. Like myself now, where I'm in Committee of Powers and Privilege, what privilege do I get from it? What is it? The other day, Mr. Speaker...
Perhaps sitting in my boardroom and having...
What do I get from you, Mr. Speaker? Honestly, Mr. Speaker, I did say, and the answer can bear me true here, last year, that there are members of committees, neighbors, we are neighbors in constituency, development projects are being done, and we are being questioned that so-and-so is doing A, B, C, D, and you are not working for it. And they are taking pride out of this. Like when he talks about the Committee of Transport, it is true. Some of them were bragging to us that they have been given a tune of 50 million. 50 million, Mr. Speaker. And when you look at it, they are using the expertise. And I'm sorry, the leader of majority, who is before me here, is emphasizing on these shameful activities that are taking place within the committees and the ministries. This one, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have to say is not right, and we must actually find this as corruption within the committees and the ministry concerns.
But now you're talking about committees. It looks like you may need to reconstitute all the committees. Is that what you are saying? It's good that you appreciate the full implications of certain decisions that you may make in the heat of the moment. It's going to reflect on some of these things before you. You recall in the last Parliament, for some reasons, which I'm sure they are already on record, we had to suspend the operations of the Committee on Budget and Appropriations. But again, it's not, there will be, they say, some bad apples here and there. But I don't think whether it is, you cannot do a blanket condemnation. Honorable Emilio Diambo, you want to say something? I want to hear the opposite gender.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first of all, let me just say that it's unfortunate that we are raising such issues before the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, there's a reason that we have Kamkunji. If I was part of the leadership of this House, I would actually urge that we do not vote, but step down this and have a Kamkunji. And the reason, Mr. Speaker, I am saying this is because, Honorable Mbadi, don't insist that we vote so that it's thrown out. Mr. Speaker, sometimes we need leadership. We need leadership for reasons that we represent constituencies. And because we represent constituencies, you said something very important. My colleague here is telling me that he also sits in privileges where they've only met once. I used to be in privileges and we met once. But I asked him, are you in privileges alone? He says no. He's in another committee. And perchance these committees, I'm not saying they benefit, because I'm not in any of those committees, so I don't know. But perchance they benefit. If you benefit in transport, then you don't benefit in privileges, it's okay. So the Speaker actually just got words from my mouth. That therefore, if perchance people are benefiting for their constituencies, not for their persons, not individually, then let us reconstitute all the committees so that those who have been benefiting in health can leave those who have not been benefiting to benefit, those who have been benefiting in transport to go and serve in the committee that has been constituted, the one for catering. Let the ones in transport go to catering. Let those who are in health go to somewhere else. Mr. Speaker, if that's the way we want. However, I would want to encourage that should we want to go that direction, I would request the leadership that we have a Kamkunji, because then there are things that we need to say in a Kamkunji. But having said that, I also just want to put record straight that I was in this House when the Budget Committee in the last Parliament was reconstituted and the matter was raised by Honorable Jakoyo. How people got to know is just because of what Honorable Mbadi says, that whenever Budget Committee brings anything into budget, it becomes very apparent before the floor of the House, because the report will show Suba North, Suba South. It will show all the MPs in those areas. However, when a member of transport benefits, it becomes very difficult for the House to know, because it will be hidden and embedded in the respective ministries, not in this report. Because of the way budget works, we don't work through any ministries, but then the oversight specific ministries. So they are likely to benefit. So even as we go this direction, I would want us and urge us to be very sober, and I really regret that this is the way we go. I've been in Parliament now 3 years, and I get shocked at the way we move in this Parliament. We don't need to raise certain issues before the floor of the House. There is a reason we have a Kamkunji, and I want to encourage us to have more Kamkunjis. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
But honourable members, even as I will allow you to make your contributions, but I think it's important, even as we discuss this matter, we take the following into account. That the House resumed its sittings on 9th of February. It's just yesterday morning that you approved the new calendar for this session. But in that calendar, if you check, and the little majority did indicate earlier, it's a tradition we've adopted that we provide for when we resume the first session of the first sitting of the other session, the 6th, which will be the last for the 12th Parliament. And the little majority did point out that you will be coming in January for the simple reason that next year being an election year in Kenya, you will be required to approve several things. One, the budget policy statement. Remember, in 2017, if I could jog the memories of those that were here, we were discussing the budget policy. The budget policy system was actually submitted sometimes in December of 2016 or 2016, because we had to go through several other processes. And remember, the Constitution merely provides in 218 that the Cabinet Secretary will table before Parliament the Division of Revenue Bill and the County Allocation of Revenue Bill before 30th of April. But now, since then, there's been a lot of litigation, and I'm sure and hope that members, you follow these things. You know, there is the recent Supreme Court advisory, by way of a ruling actually, that there can never be a division of revenue, there can never be an Appropriations Act before a Division of Revenue Act is in place. So that puts quite some strain on what we have been used to traditionally. It means that even this year, we must pass the Division of Revenue Bill and have it assented to before we can come to think about the Appropriations Bill. Now, having resumed on 9th, and the PFM Act, as well as our standing orders, providing that the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury shall submit to Parliament the budget policy statement on or before 15th of February. It became necessary for me to direct the clerk to write to the leader or majority, leader minority, that we need to have names of the people who are going to sit in most of these committees which are being reconstituted, sessional committees, and particularly, more importantly, the Budget and Appropriations Committee, because the 15th is Monday next week. And it is also time-bound. You know, the various departmental committees, again, you'll all have to go and start burning the midnight oil, plowing through the budget policy statement, and give your reports to the Budget and Appropriations Committee. If there's no Budget and Appropriations Committee, which I think is what you want, then I think then you want to submit it to who? To the Powers and Privileges Committee or what? Which is not the committee expected to deal with that. So there was need for us at the administration of Parliament to seek the leadership to give us the names of the people to sit. And it's for that reason that the Honorable John Bundy explained that he had to travel, because it was important, it was necessary that these names are in place. Because going beyond today, then when do you have the Budget and Appropriations Committee? So, honorable members, that's why I said, even as you make whatever decisions you make, you must also bear in mind that we are also bound by the laws of this land. It is Parliament that enacted the Public Finance and Management PFM Act 2012. It puts those demands. Now, the Supreme Court decision has also placed further demands on the House. So, honourable members, even as you make your contributions, I think you must bear all these factors in mind. Honourable Sankok, I can see you are really burning to say something.
Yes, Honourable Speaker, because I'm a member of the Committee on Selection, Honourable Speaker. And Honourable Speaker, as you have rightfully explained, we are really constrained in terms of time, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, we sat yesterday, the whole afternoon, Honourable Speaker, making sure that we have these committees in place, especially this Committee on Budget, Honourable Speaker. And Honourable Speaker, coming from the whip, that is the one that is complaining, and we received the names. And I remember that we had the people even calling the whips, so that some names that were missing, Honourable Speaker, had to be consulted from the whips, especially Honourable Junior, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, let us not bring personal differences into such things, Honourable Speaker, because as a House, we have to put our own benefit ahead of the benefit of the whole country. And for the sake of the whole country, and for the sake of the budget process, Honourable Speaker, we need this committee in place, Honourable Speaker. And Honourable Speaker, as I sit in the Committee of Selection, Honourable Speaker, we really did consult wide, Honourable Speaker. Some of us were making phone calls to make sure that we really put in place. And Honourable Speaker, when it comes to, Honourable Speaker, the issue of maybe some members benefiting or others not benefiting, let us think of our country first. Because considering the time constraint, Honourable Speaker, I think even Honourable Millie had just spoken very well, Honourable Speaker. Some issues here, you don't have to really bring all these issues in front of them. I read malice, Honourable Speaker. So, Honourable Speaker, I support this particular, and we should pass, Honourable Speaker, so that we can move forward as a country, Honourable Speaker. Thank you. I support.
No, honourable members, I think. Do I say that? Let me put the question. You make the decision one way or other. In any event, honourable members, remember you have another sitting at 7 p.m. So let me put the question. You decide one way or other. I'm lucky because I'm not supposed to vote. So even if you tied, the motion will be lost. You will not get my vote. So, honourable members, I put the question. That, why am I getting it? Yes. Pursuant to the provision of standing under 175 and 207, this House approves the appointment of the following members to the Budget and Appropriations Committee. The Honourable James Kanini Kega Madenge MP, the Honourable Moses Lesonet MP, the Honourable Bernard Masaka Shinali MP, the Honourable Ruth Wangari Mwaniki MP, the Honourable Sarah Paulata Korere MP, the Honourable Samuel Moroto Chumer MP, the Honourable Fatuma Gedi Ali MP, the Honourable James Geshoke Mugambi MP, the Honourable Marcelino Albere MP, the Honourable Emmanuel Wangwe MP, the Honourable Josephine Naisula Lesunda MP, the Honourable June Jomo MP, the Honourable Florence Chemngetich Koskei MP, the Honourable Mase Wanjiko Gakuya MP, the Honourable Francis Kuria Kimani MP, the Honourable Alfred Kipto Keter MP, the Honourable CPA John Bandi MP, the Honourable Millie Odhiambo Mabona MP, the Honourable Dr. Benson Makali Mulu MP, the Honourable Samuel Onunga Atandi MP, the Honourable Bandi Twalib Bandi MP, the Honourable Engineer Mark Nyamita MP, the Honourable Paul Abur MP, the Honourable Danson Mwashako Mwakuona MP, the Honourable John Sakwa Bunyasi MP, the Honourable Richard Onyonka MP, and the Honourable Joseph Manche MP. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? No. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Is there no dispute, is it? Very well. Next order.
Order number 11, motion. Appointment of members to the Committee on Appointments.
Chair of Committee on Selection.
Honourable Speaker, I beg to move that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 175 and 204, This House approves the appointment of following members to the Committee on Appointments, in addition to those specified at the Standing Order number 2041. 1. The Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe, CBS MP, the Honorable Dr. Rachel Kaki Nyamai MP, the Honorable David Gikari MP, the Honorable Joyce Akaye Maniko MP, the Honorable Khatib Abdallah Mwashatani MP, the Honorable Maito Sabina Wanjiru Chege MP, the Honorable Sarah Paulata Korere MP, the Honorable Yusuf Hassan Abdi MP, the Honorable William Kamuren Chirchir Chepkut MP, the Honorable David Olesankok MP, the Honorable Lydia Haika Mnene Mzigi MP, the Honorable Rehema Dida Jaldesa MP, the Honorable Mercy Wanjiku Kakuya MP, the Honorable James Kanini Kiaga Madenge MP, the Honorable Alfred Kiptok Keter MP, the Honorable Junet Sheikh Nur Mohammed MP, the Honorable Dr. David Eseli Simiyu MP, the Honorable George Peter Opondo Kaluma MP, the Honorable Francis Tom Joseph Kajwang MP, the Honorable Esther Mudhoni Rosanna Pasaris MP, the Honorable Gertrude Mbeu Mwanjaje MP, and the Honorable Joshua Kivinda Kimilu MP. Honorable Speaker, as members may have noted, again, this committee serves for a 3-year term and a second term of 2 years. This is a committee that determines whenever appointments have been referred from the President, and it's chaired by the Speaker. Again, it's not a very busy committee. Members have actually had very little in terms of meetings, and when we looked at it from selection, we said it will not be good to then reconstitute this committee. We are not even sure whether there will be how many more appointments will be made, and hence bringing in people from other committees and putting them in this committee and losing the institutional memory, the institutional strength that's already been created with this committee for 1.5 years is perhaps not the best thing to do. And hence, the whole committee has been reappointed in total. So I just wanted to alert members on that. That is the situation. And I would like to ask members that we don't have this feeling that members get into committees for personal benefit. I certainly would be very disappointed if we had that the feeling, the agitation for specific committees is because of a perceived benefit in that committee. Because then I would wonder, why would members even want to serve in the first, in the committee, in the chairperson's panel, sitting here for 3 hours, and I'm not sure they get any benefit from sitting on that chair. But it's a service, and I believe that's what we need to focus at the end of it all, that we are here to serve, to make Kenya a better country than it is, rather than any benefits that might accrue because of you serving in a committee. In any case, it goes against Chapter 6 of the Constitution. And I think the Speaker, you have ruled on this severally, including the way we conduct ourselves in committees, including the issue of escorting people who appear before committees, so that you are not seen that because someone appeared before a committee and the committee members are escorting that person, that perhaps they are going to debate how to change the issue that were there. The issue of independence becomes very critical. And I would want to believe, as has been said, the transparency that's actually brought in by the Budget Committee and by others, by tabling the reports here, so that people can see, what was the rationale for the decision the committee arrived at, and based on that we make a decision, not on deals that were cut in places outside. And I would like to believe that we are actually, when a committee brings a report here on any matter, any inquiry, is because they have exercised their mind and experience and professionalism into the matter, rather than going to negotiate for a personal benefit or even a constituency benefit. So I would like to believe that's what's happening. That's how I was trained. That's how I want to see the Parliament moving, going forward. And hence, even those who have appointed, should it appear to us, and I believe we have discussed this at length with my colleague, the leader of minority, that should it appear to us that members are extracting rents in the committees, and we will get to all that information from the people who appear. Then we'll be the first ones to actually ask the whips to de-whip those members so that we have a cleaner 12th Parliament and set the pace for the 13th Parliament. And I think that we will stick to that standard, and the members will be at liberty to take any action on me. But I'll clean up before they clean me out, because I wouldn't worry. I've been impeached before for taking a stance, and I would be happy to take the same stance to ensure that we have some sense of integrity and decorum in the way the committees will work. And I believe members are here. We will support in terms of ensuring that we don't go down as the 12th Parliament, as a Parliament where we are seen that we only serve in committees for benefits. Such that today, even, Honorable Speaker, when we extend time to serve Kenyans and dedicate time at night, because of the kind of insinuations we're making on our own selves, the media then says we extended time so we can get more allowance. Surely, if I'm out of here, I would make more money than sitting here for an extra 2 hours. And I'm sure it's the same with most of these members. So on this committee on appointments, I would hope we don't end up with the same situation of saying that we need more people to get more experience on vetting of appointment, because we don't even know whether there'll be an appointment or not between now and the time we close. And it's also very difficult to reconstitute committees. By the time you reconstitute one committee, by moving people around, you end up reconstituting the entire House. And that's not an exercise that will take the next 1 week. It could take longer. So I wish to just ask members, and I want to thank members for just having voted very well on the Budget Committee, because we were almost at the verge of saying, looks like perhaps our leadership is not being appreciated in this House by the comments that I had. Honourable members, I want to plead that we move on with this and other changes, and I want to move that we approve these names and ask my colleague, the Leader Minority, to second.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also want to second this motion. And just to say that we are basically almost retaining, apart from maybe a few changes, the membership. But in addition to these members, there are some who are already specified in our standing order. So this is in addition to those members. Mr. Speaker, the Leader Majority has mentioned something that I thought is worth also talking about. The image that the media tries to portray about Parliament. I know sometimes it is hard to change the perception of the media. But I think, Mr. Speaker, remember when we were in the House Business Committee, even for us to agree to add the two meetings, the two sittings of Tuesday evening and Thursday evening, we really labored the point, and it was not very easy for us to agree, because we felt that first, 7 to 9 would be too late for members. And again, we were also looking at the workload and looking at the fact that this is probably the last most critical session of this 12th Parliament. And we were also looking at what is happening elsewhere. The House of Congress, when you go to the House of Commons in the United Kingdom, how they sacrifice and spend more time. And then for the media to turn it around and make it appear like we are creating 2 more sittings to get money. Really, the sitting allowance in this Parliament, I don't think would motivate, so to speak, if you ask me, to choose between the 5,000 a sitting that I get and maybe something else that I would be doing that evening. I would probably opt. And that is why you will find many members will not even appear here in that sitting. But there will be enough members out of the 349 to transact business. This evening, we are likely to transact the referendum law, which is very critical if we have to go for referendum. And these members, and I want to plead with them, I even sent out a message, my whip sent out a message to the members to be here at 7 to discuss this referendum bill. So it is actually, I don't want to call it a sacrifice, but it is we are taking responsibility as members of parliament elected by our people to legislate, to deliberate on issues that affect this country. So, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted the media sometimes to also be kind to these members of parliament. Many of us sacrifice a lot to sit and legislate for this country, even though it is our work, Mr. Speaker, but I don't think we do everything here just when we are just motivated with financial gains. If that were the case, many of us would not even be here, or we would make technical appearance. Many of us, Mr. Speaker, since 2:30, we have been here, seated here. No one has glued us on these chairs. We are here to do business. So that is what I wanted to say, Mr. Speaker. But again, let not the discussion that went around the budget, the issue of the budget committee appear like it was a big issue. I think it was just an issue of discussion. And going forward, probably we will be consulting on certain issues much better, as we have been consulting before, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, and I second.
I propose the question, which is that pursuant to the provisions standing under 175 and 204, this House approves the appointment of the following members to the Committee on Appointments, in addition to those specified under standing under 204, subsection 1. 1. The Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe, MP. The Honorable Dr. Rachel Kaki Nyamai, MP. The Honorable David Gikaria, MP. The Honorable Joyce Emanicol, MP. The Honorable Khatib Abdallah Mwashetani, MP. The Honorable Maito Sabina Wanjiro Chege, MP. The Honorable Sarah Paulata Korele, MP. The Honorable Yusuf Hassan Abdi, MP. The Honorable William Kamren Chirchir Chepkut, MP. The Honorable David Olesankok, MP. The Honorable Lydia Haikam Mnene Mzigi, MP. The Honorable Rehema Dida Jaldesa, MP. The Honorable Masi Wanjiku Kakuya, MP. The Honorable James Kanini Kega Madenge, MP. The Honorable Alfred Kiptol Keter, MP. The Honorable Junaid Sheikh Nur Mohammed, MP. The Honorable Dr. David Eseli Simio, MP. The Honorable George Peter Opondo Kaluma, MP. The Honorable Francis Tom Joseph Kajuang, MP. The Honorable Esther Modoni Rosana Pasaris, MP. The Honorable Gertrude Beyu Mwanyanje, MP. And the Honorable Joshua Kivinda Kimilu, MP. So the House, I put the question. I therefore put the question, which is that pursuant to the provisions of standing under 175 and 204, this House approves the appointment of the following members to the Committee on Appointments, in addition to those specified under standing under 204, subsection 1. The Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe, MP. The Honorable Dr. Rachel Kaki Nyamai, MP. The Honorable David Ikari, MP. The Honorable Joyce Emanicol, MP. The Honorable Khatib Abdallah Mwashetani, MP. The Honorable Maito Sabina Wajiro Chege, MP. The Honorable Sarah Paulata Korere, MP. The Honorable Yusuf Hassan Abdi, MP. The Honorable William Kamren Chirchir Chepkut, MP. The Honorable David Olesankok, MP. The Honorable Lydia Haika Mnene Mzigi, MP. The Honorable Rehema Dida Jaldesa, MP. The Honorable Masi Wanjiko Kakuya, MP. The Honorable James Kanini Rosana Pasaris, MP. The Honorable Gertrude Beyu Mwanyanje, MP. And the Honorable Joshua Kivinda Kimilu, MP. Will as many as what opinion say aye? Aye. As many as contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. Next.
Order number 12, motion. Further changes to the membership of various committees.
Honourable Speaker, I beg to move that further to the resolutions of the House of Tuesday, 5th December 2017, and Wednesday, 15th of July 2020, appointing members into various committees and pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order number 173. This House further approves the appointment of the following members to the respective committees as specified here under. Number 1, the Honorable John Waluke Koi, MP, to be appointed to the Public Accounts Committee. The Honorable Faisal Abdallah Bader, MP, to be appointed to the Committee on Implementation. The Honorable Rehema Dida Jaldesa, MP, to move from the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing to the Departmental Committee on Sports, Culture and Tourism. The Honorable Janet Nagambo Wanyama, to move from the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare to the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing. The Honorable Nelson Koech, MP, to move from the Departmental Committee on Sports, Culture and Tourism to the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. The Honorable Gideon Kimtai Koske, MP, to move from the Public Accounts Committee to the Special Funds Accounts Committee. And the Honorable Abdi Koropu Tepo, MP, to move from the Special Funds Accounts Committee to the Committee on National Cohesion and Equal Opportunity. Honorable members, Honorable Speaker, as members will be aware, the Honorable Waluke and the Honorable Faisal Abdallah have not had any committee. The Honorable Faisal is a new member in Mozambique. He came in on an independent, as an independent candidate, and he rightfully moves into the Committee on Implementation. And the Honorable Waluke did not have a committee when we were reconstituting, so he's now been allocated a committee in public accounts. And the Honorable Nelson Koech did request to be shifted from the committee where he was because he was serving with a close relative in a committee, and he thought we don't want to make it a family affair, and hence he requested to be shifted. And in terms of accommodating those three, it's also cost now shifts elsewhere because you need to know where to move people around, also based on other considerations and requests, either from the chairs or from other members in the committee, to create the gap to accommodate those. And that's how complex it gets. And obviously, there was the Honorable Tepo moving in to fill the position that was left by Honorable Sankok when he moved out of the Cohesion Committee. So, members, I think we've also received several requests from members feeling they want to move. But my request would be that we, first of all, give another 1 month or two for things to settle. We look at the attendance registers, we get some reports on the performance of members, and we have more discussion for any further changes that members would want to see. I know there are members who have only one committee. There are some members who might have more than one committee, or some with two, some with three, and we need to rationalize all these things, but without a rush. Because if we do it in a rush, we'll end up in the same situation like you're in. So I would like to ask that members do agree to this list, and these changes basically affect mainly membership within the Jubilee Coalition, and hence I beg to move, and I would ask my Deputy Whip, the Honorable Mauka Maore, to second.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to second.
Members, I propose the question, which is that further to the resolutions of the House on Tuesday, 5th December 2017, and Wednesday, 15th July 2020, appointing members into various committees, and pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 173, this House further approves the appointment of the following members to the respective committees as specified hereunder. 1, the Honorable John Waluke Koi, MP, to be appointed to the Public Accounts Committee. 2, the Honorable Faisal Abdallah Bader, MP, to be appointed to the Committee on Implementation. 3, the Honorable Rehema Dida Jaldesa, MP, to move from the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing to the Departmental Committee on Sports, Culture and Tourism. for the Honorable Janet Nangabo Wanyama MP to move from the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare to the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing. 5, the Honorable Nelson Koech MP to move from the Departmental Committee on Sports, Culture and Tourism to the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. 6, the Honorable Gideon Kimtai Koske MP to move from Public Accounts Committee to the Special Funds Accounts Committee. And 7, the Honorable Abdi Koropu Tepo MP to move from the Special Funds Accounts Committee to the Committee on National Cohesion and Equal Opportunity. I put the question. Very well. I put the question, which is further to the resolution of the House on Tuesday, 5th December 2017 and Wednesday, 15th July 2020, appointing members into various committees and pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 173, the House now approves the appointment of the following members to the respective committees as specified hereunder. Honorable Aluke, MP, to be appointed to Public Accounts Committee. The Honorable Faisal Abdallah Bader to be appointed to the Committee on Implementation. The Honorable Rehema Dida Jeldesa, MP, to move from the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing to the Departmental Committee on Sports, Culture and Tourism. The Honorable Janet Nangabo Wanyama, MP, to move from the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare to the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing. The Honorable Nelson Koech, MP, to move from the Departmental Committee on Sports, Culture and Tourism to the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. The Honorable Gideon Kimtai Koske, MP, to move from the Public Accounts Committee to the Special Funds Accounts Committee. And the Honorable Abdi Korobu Tepo, MP, to move from the Special Funds Accounts Committee to the Committee on National Cohesion and Equal Opportunity. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. And the changes take effect immediately. Next
Order number 13, motion. Approval of sectional paper number 1 of 2020 on the Kenya Wildlife Service Policy.
The Chair of Environmental Committee, Honorable Kareke Mbiuki.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that the House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources on sessional paper number 1 of 2020 on the Kenya Wildlife Service Policy, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, December 3rd, 2020, and further approves the sessional paper number 01 of 2020. Mr. Speaker, sir, the sessional, Madam Speaker, the sessional paper number 01 of 2020 on wildlife policy from the Departmental Committee, from the State Department of Wildlife in the Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife was laid on the table of the House by the leader of the majority party on 28 July 2020 and therefore stood committed to the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. Madam Speaker, the wildlife sector is currently being guided by the post-independence policy sessional paper number 3 of 1975 entitled A Statement of the Future of the Wildlife Management Policy in Kenya. The policy set out a strategy for integrated wildlife conservation and management based on the participation of both communities and the private sector. Madam Speaker, the main goal of the policy was to maximize returns from the wildlife as a natural resource. Madam Speaker, the policy was affected by the enactment of the Wildlife, that is Conservation and Management Act of 1976. And thereafter, Madam Speaker, the Act was amended in 1989 to create the Kenya Wildlife Service for the conservation and management as well as the protection of all wildlife in Kenya. However, Madam Speaker, it is noted in the proposed policy that the 1975 policy was not capable of addressing emerging challenges and the realities in the sector, including effects of the climate change, weak linkages between science and policy, rapid population growth, rapid economic development that has encroached on space for wildlife, increased human-wildlife conflict, which the members of this House really been agitating on, as well as inadequate coordination of the sectorial policies. This, Madam Speaker, necessitated a review of the policy. Madam Speaker, the rationale for the need of the new policy is that Kenya prides itself as the second-ranking country in Africa, after South Africa, in hosting diverse animal species. It is home to over 1,100 bird species and over 350 mammal species. It is also home to more than 7,000 plants species, over 25,000 insect species, and over 224 fresh water species. Madam Speaker, the wildlife and its associated habitats and the ecosystem are significant economic assets as well as rich natural heritage. The goal of the new policy, Madam Speaker, therefore, is to create an enabling environment for the conservation, sustainable management of wildlife for the current and future generation, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the proposed wildlife policy aims at averting the fragmentation of natural habitats and sustaining the ecological processes underpinning the diversity of ecosystems. Madam Speaker, the policy document contains 6 chapters. Chapter 1, Madam Speaker, elaborates on the origin of wildlife policy and practices in Kenya since 19th century. Chapter 2, Madam Speaker, reviews the status of the wildlife conservation in Kenya. Chapter 3 articulates the overall goal and objectives of the policy, including the guiding principles underpinning the policy. Chapter 4, Madam Speaker, contains proposals on 14 thematic areas that define sustainable wildlife conservation and management. And chapter 5, Madam Speaker, contains legal and institutional arrangement necessary to bring about reforms in the wildlife sector. And finally, Madam Speaker, chapter 6 contains proposals and prescriptions necessary for the operationalization of this policy, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the following socio-economic changes and threats to wildlife call for more effective conservation policies. A, promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 with the provision and imperatives for the devolution, sustainable exploitation, utilization, management and conservation of the environment and natural resources, and ensuring sharing of the accrued benefits. B, biodiversity as assumed enormous importance globally and nationally for its role in sustaining livelihood. C, Madam Speaker, wildlife has become a strategic national asset as its economic use has expanded in terms of nature-based tourism. And D, Madam Speaker, pressure on wildlife have been rising rapidly due to encroaching human population, rapid economic challenges, as well as intensified resource use. And D, Madam Speaker, escalating new threats and challenges such as sophisticated poaching, climate change, and its impacts, among others. F, Madam Speaker, increased human-wildlife conflict. And finally, inadequate research innovations and technological capacity. Madam Speaker, the key features of the Wildlife Policy 2020 include the following. A, provision of the establishment of protected areas as the principal strategy for conserving and managing wildlife, and strongly advocate for integrated management. B, proposes for intervention to avert fragmentation of natural habitats and sustaining the ecological process underpinning the diversity of the ecosystem, Madam Speaker. C, provision on mitigating human-wildlife conflict and enhancing coexistence between wildlife and human beings, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the policy also proposes means and reasons for mobilizing support and developing partnership between national and county governments, government agencies, community and private land owners with jurisdiction over land holding significant population of wildlife. Madam Speaker, the policy reaffirms the right of the people to assess and benefit equitably from the wildlife resource as provided for under the Constitution of Kenya. Madam Speaker, the policy provisions provide for the voluntary wildlife conservation intervention, including incentives for the wildlife conservation and management in private and community land outside the government-protected areas. And Madam Speaker, proposals on measures and means of increasing access and sustainable use of wildlife resource while ensuring equitable sharing of benefits. And Madam Speaker, the policy proposes to expand the scope of wildlife-based enterprises for landowners, including bioprospecting. Madam Speaker, the policy also introduces new definitions, terms and places to capture the new developments and emerging issues, especially in regard to the Constitution and international best practices. And finally, Madam Speaker, the policy provides for the reorganization of the wildlife sector to streamline operations and clarify the laws and responsibilities of the various sectors, including separating the powers and responsibilities between the ministry and the Kenya Wildlife Service. And finally, the policy emphasis will be placed on conserving wildlife, not only within the government protected areas, but also outside private and community conservancies by adopting the new concept of sustainable participatory wildlife conservation. Madam Speaker, the Committee of Environment and Natural Resources held various sittings on 25th September 2020. We also held sitting on 21st October 2020, as well as on 24th, to consider the session of paper number 1 of 2020 on human wildlife policy. The committee observed that the sector needed a new policy document to address the new challenges and dynamics in the sector, and therefore unanimously resolved to support the session of paper number 1 of 2020 and wildlife policy. Madam Speaker, I therefore urge this House to adopt this report on the human wildlife policy, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it's also good to be conscious that this House have been seized with this use of human wildlife conflict. Madam Speaker, I remember from Kibwezi East, which you represent, you have received several petitions across the country, Savo, all over, because of the current issues of human wildlife conflict, Madam Speaker. And we strongly believe this session of paper and the policies therein will be able to adequately address the issues of human wildlife conflict, which are really affected the issues of conservation. Madam Speaker, therefore, I would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to the committee members for their resilience and devotion to duty, which made the consideration of the policy successful. I would also like to appreciate the offices of the Speaker and the Clerk of the National Assembly for always providing guidance and direction to the committees in the discharge of their mandate. I therefore, Madam Speaker, I also appreciate the Minister of Tourism and Wildlife for the engagement with the committee and other stakeholders during the consideration of the session of paper. Finally, Madam Speaker, I commend the Secretariat for exemplary performance in providing technical and logistical support to the committee. Madam Speaker, I beg to move and now call upon the Honorable Francis Chachu to second. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Chachu for seconding. Honorable Chachu for seconding.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to second
the motion that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources on session paper number 1 of 2020 on wildlife policy. Madam Speaker, wildlife resources are valuable national endowments that must be managed sustainably for current and future generations. Madam Speaker, the wildlife is a bedrock to Kenya's tourism industry. Madam Speaker, the wildlife-related tourism sector contributes about over 10% to our gross domestic product, our GDP. In addition, Madam Speaker, the sector contributes over 18% to the foreign exchange earnings of this republic. Madam Speaker, the wildlife sector is currently governed by 1975 wildlife policy. Madam Speaker, the 45 years old wildlife policy Madam Speaker, the 45 years wildlife policy, are well-intentioned, it may be, is not able to deal with current challenges facing the wildlife sector in our country. Madam Speaker, there are many emerging challenges that this sector faces. Among them, Madam Speaker, is habitat conversion, poaching of wildlife, population growth, and to this, Madam Speaker, is the issue of competing land uses and further development in our national park and sanctuaries. Madam Speaker, the introduction of this sessional paper number 1 of 2020 on wildlife policy is the end result of wildlife policy reform process, which have been ongoing since 2010. Madam Speaker, the wildlife policy reform intends to align the sector to reforms in our current constitution, that is 2010 constitution. Madam Speaker, the new policy will enable the nation to address the current challenges facing wildlife and biodiversity conservation. Madam Speaker, the new policy addresses several challenges facing the sector at the moment. This includes, Madam Speaker, among others, management of national parks, reserves and sanctuaries, management of wildlife on private lands and community lands, Madam Speaker, the issues of wildlife security, interventions related to human-wildlife conflict, the issues of bioprospecting, access to genetic resources, Madam Speaker, the issue of management of our endangered wildlife species, our rhinos, and many other species, Madam Speaker. In addition, Madam Speaker, the whole issue of research and monitoring of wildlife in this country. Madam Speaker, I urge the House to adopt and approve the sessional paper number 1 of 2020 on wildlife policy. Madam Speaker, once this House approves this policy, it will enable the government, through this House, to initiate legislative processes that will amend the Wildlife Act that's in place at the moment, and this will enable us to address the challenges highlighted in this sessional paper. Madam Speaker, Kenya has always been a leader in wildlife conservation. And Madam Speaker, it's really important that we support this sessional paper, because what we had governing our wildlife management in this country is what we had in 1975. Madam, it's 45 years old. It's archaic. It's not relevant to the current challenges facing wildlife conservation, and it's not even in line with our current constitution. It's for the reason, Madam Speaker, it's so critical that we are able to adopt this sessional paper, which is the current wildlife, which will be the new wildlife policy, and this will enable us to be a leader, as we have always been, in management of our wildlife resources in this republic. Madam Speaker, I beg to second.
You beg to second. Very well. Our members, I propose the question, which is that this House adopts the reports of the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources on sessional paper number 1 of 2020 on the Kenya Wildlife Service Policy, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, December 3rd, 2020, and further approve sessional paper number 01 of 2020. Let me have the first one on my request list is the member for Makueni, Honorable Manso Kitonga.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for an opportunity to contribute on a very, very important policy.
raise to support it, Madam Speaker, and congratulate the committee and the Minister of Tourism and Wildlife for a job well done. Policy is very important in every department, and I wish you could have more of this. I'm aware the ministry, the Department of Cooperatives have also presented their policy to Parliament, because without policy, you can't really make law. But the moment you have policy in what is also known as mwongozo in Kiswahili, it streamlines the activities of that department, and when we amend the laws, we tie to that policy, and it is achieved after a very thorough investigation and consultation as to what should be happening in that department. We are aware the Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife, and especially when it comes to wildlife itself, there are a lot of issues which are pending in the country. They also occupy a lot of land. And there must be a way of demarcating the borders so that to avoid wildlife conflict with the people. This morning we learned from a Member of Parliament, Sawa, who was presenting something on a certain tree, a certain crop from coast, which when it's planted, yes, it is a Kiswahili word which is even much better, mrangi. That's what wananchi in Kenya will understand. And this particular plant, when planted around farms, the elephants, when they smell it, they turn away. They don't attack those farms. Elephants have been one of the biggest conflicts between wildlife and human life, and this has been witnessed in Taita Taveta, in Makueni, Kitui, and many Meru, and many counties in the country, and that has not yet been resolved. And I believe through this policy we are going to come up with a system and even a budget to make sure that the conservation areas are well secured, fenced, and the animals do not kill people every other day. And our life is very precious. The question is, who is more important, the animal or the human being? And we have to have a balance so that we make sure the animals are safe and the human beings are also safe. One of my disappointments in all this matter of wildlife, and I'm sure Chair and members will assist me on this, is the issue of snake bites. A snake now has been removed from the schedule, and in the lower eastern areas, among other areas in the country, at least every year we lose about 250 people. So in this policy, if we had a system of, or if we could consider bringing back the snake as one of the animals one could be compensated for in the schedule, it would be better, so that also the wildlife team comes up with a better way of securing snakes for the right purposes, so that snakes don't kill people. A snake bite is very dangerous, especially from certain species of snakes. And nowadays I've learned from doctors and scientists, they're even unable to treat a snake bite because snakes have sort of intermarried, or for lack of a better, they have crossbred. And even you are coming up with the snakes which never used to be there, and the poison even you have no, and some anti-venom for it. So with this particular problem, Madam Speaker, together with the other problems surrounding this, we really need to come up with solutions, because you can see that's nature and things have changed. So I'm going to work with the chairman and your team so that we can serve our people better. Really, removing a snake bite as one of the compensation animals, was really unfair to many Kenyans, and a lot of families have suffered. Last week I helped a young child, 6 years only, who got a snake bite, and a very dangerous one, and the doctors were on strike, and actually 2 other incidents of school-going children died. And really it's painful when we lose a person out of a snake bite and there's no compensation, or we have a better way of managing it and coming with the medication to make sure this wildlife conflict with the people does not affect people further, and we give solutions as a house. I really thank you, Madam Speaker.
Very well. It is true that when I'm here as a speaker, I have no votes on this. But I'm sure before the end of the debate, because we have 2.5 hours I may be sitting as a representative of the people of Kibwezi. And for sure, the chairman did protect me very well that I've brought a lot of petitions. But on that matter, I want to give the member for Ndebez, the Honorable Pukose Robert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Malaria ni ugonjwa hatari sana unaoua watu wengi hapa Kenya. Japo kuko na korona, hatari ya malaria bado iko. Mtoto huyu alikuwa na joto jingi, kutetemeka, kuumwa na viungo na uchovu. Alikimbizwa hospitali ya umma ambako sheria za COVID-19 huzingatiwa na ni salama kwa shughuli ya upimaji. Vipimo vilionyesha kuwa ana malaria na papo hapo daktari akampa dawa za malaria na kumshauri azimalize, na ili kujikinga wawe wakilala ndani ya neti iliyotibiwa. Malaria husambazwa na mbu. Walio hatarini ni watoto wa chini ya miaka 5 na akina mama wajawazito. Kupimwa na kutibiwa ni bure katika hospitali zote za umma. Usisahau adui malaria. Zero malaria huanza na mimi. Chukua jukumu leo. Komesha malaria. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwenu na Wizara ya Afya.
Valentine is coming.
Auntie, where's your boyfriend?
I am sitting at home.
Ukiwekelea beat pale nyumbani, ni rahisi zaidi. Leo tunapeana nini?
Tunapeana 4 burner cooker ya Von. Unapika na unabake. Mara moja ni ya gas cooker. Wekelea sasa. Nenda kwenye quickbid.co.ke. Kila wakati ni bidhaa bora kwenye bei ya nini?
Chini kwa chini.
Jiunga na Quickbid ni rahisi. Enda kwenye M-Pesa, bonyeza paybill kisha weka business number 4032353. Kwenye account weka kodi ya bidhaa unayotaka na bidi yako ya chini zaidi. Kwa mfano TV 16. Kisha weka shilingi 20 tu kama idadi yako. Weka bidi yako pia kwenye www.quickbid.co.ke. Kumbuka, bidi ya chini zaidi ya kipekee ndio hununua. Quickbid, bidhaa bora kwa bei ya chini.
This weekend on KBC Channel 1.
Now, not only do I have to deal with, cancer, now I can't walk. Then I also felt like God had left me too. So